Hope you all had a safe holiday. We want to welcome you in on this Tuesday to Coronavirus Inside the Arizona Numbers. We've been away from you for a while, so we want to get you caught up on this weekend and answer any questions you have about coronavirus data and coronavirus numbers here in Arizona. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And Garrett, hopefully you had nice time away. We missed you because we kind of wanted an overview also of how the numbers looked over the weekend. So a lot of people watching really haven't checked the numbers since like say Thursday or Friday. Today was relatively low, but how did things look overall for the weekend?
So, yeah, as you said, today, very, very low. It is holiday reporting. We sort of said to everybody that expect low numbers today, and in fact, very low numbers today, 81 cases. That's the lowest we've seen since March, late March of last year. However, as we said, this is like the lowest of the low. So we're going to have to sort of wait for another couple days to see what actually occurred. So as far as this weekend, we're still low. We have seen some upticks. I've got as a chart shared from Johns Hopkins University that is ready to go. It might be a little hard to see. I'll bring it up a little bit. This is an interesting chart because this one is a reported. It's not the epi curve, but it does show like the different events in Arizona and the timeline and what has occurred and what has happened after that occurrence. So really, for why I'm showing you this chart instead of starting at the summary pages, we really need to pay attention to the 7-day moving average when we've been off for so many days. So you can see right here, we left you on the 4th. And here we are at the, this is coming up on the 5th, and you can see we have a slight uptick in cases that we have that they're recording right now. So as of right now, we're still in a slight uptick. But we'll see what happens over the next couple of days to see how long or how sustained that uptick is going to be. I'll also bring it up on a different graph as well. Just I'm trying to find one that might be a little easier to read. And as soon as I find that, I'll send it over.
Okay. And as we see this, Garrett, and we're hearing about this holiday weekend, and you know what? People behave themselves, it seems, here in Arizona. We sent reporters out everywhere, and it seems that most people were keeping their masks on, keeping their distance, and being safe about the holiday. At least from what we were tracking, it looked very different than it did over Memorial Day weekend. So that's some encouraging news. We did have one more bar/restaurant turn be shut down by the state. That is Grub and Pub in Chandler. So they add to a list of places that are now shut down by the Arizona Department of Health Services. They have to stay closed until they have permission to reopen. The ones we told you about last week, Glow Shots and Cocktails, Bottled Blonde, and Casa Amigos in Scottsdale. So those are the only 4 places so far that they had to order to be closed, but we wanted to keep you updated on that information as well. So when we're looking at the chart just for today, we did add a few numbers on. We had 81 cases specifically added to the list in the last 24 hours. We also had 2 deaths added on. And Garrett, that's of note also because yesterday was one of those strange days in reporting where the deduplicates showed up as a greater number overall than those adding the death numbers in. So what that means is we saw a negative number yesterday.
We did see a negative number, and we saw some of it come back today. So I've got a different graph shared. This is the one that I generate. It's probably going to be just a bit easier to see, so that's why I brought it in here. Let's see if I can even zoom in a little. I think it's still in the zoom. It's still in the snip tool, so I can't. But you should still be able to see this. Right here, you can see I've got this going all the way to today, but you can see over the weekend we did have a bounce. This is why I know I was gone, but a lot of people were talking about the RT number going up, and it did go above 1. That is because, as you can see, we did have, at least the reported cases, did have its foot on the gas pedal for just a few short moments. We'll see how long that lasts, but there is a noticeable uptick. And we attribute that mostly to testing at Arizona State University. We haven't seen any numbers from this weekend yet. I did look at the global the mobility indexes to see if we have any indication of what's happening. We only have data from September 5th. So tomorrow we may start seeing what as you said, Arizona's behaving themselves. We will see. We'll start seeing tomorrow how much data we can use to back up that statement.
Yeah. So we'll wait one more day for that information to come out. Somebody just asked a question about how many results we've gotten in. Kathy's asking how much testing is getting done. Kathy, we did get more than 3,700 test results in overnight. That takes our state total here in Arizona to more than 1.5 million test results that have come in. So Kathy, thank you for that.
This weekend they reported, the state reported 14,000 cases this weekend, which is actually, it's a low number for what we've seen for the last couple days because we are getting ASU tests in. That's actually lower than what we saw on the 5th collectively. But again, we were seeing a lot of testing at ASU. We haven't seen sort of that, it wasn't a sustained spike. I don't know if we're going to continue seeing testing being reported at ASU right now, but we haven't seen it yet.
So one of the things of note about the ASU testing that we reported on last night is that they're reporting active cases instead of a cumulative number, which is concerning. We'd like them to report both numbers so that everybody can judge for themselves. But it's curious because we discovered this because the number went down on the reporting. So they report Monday and Thursday to us and let us know how those numbers look. And Monday's numbers came out. We expected it to go up, maybe a little, maybe a lot, but up, and it went down. And they said, okay, we're only revealing the cumulative numbers. That can be
the active numbers.
Yes, the active numbers. So that can be problematic when you're comparing it school to school or trying to make decisions for your family.
I mean, it can be, but it's also, it's one of those weird things because we've had a lot of sort of misidentification of total cases versus cumulative cases. We talk about this a lot in that, for example, COVID tracking, because the state doesn't give an active case number, COVID tracking still assumes that there's somewhere upwards to 180,000 active cases in Arizona that are confirmed active cases. That's absolutely not the case. Some of the modeling does take care of that and get presumes a much lower active number. But what ASU is doing is they're saying, look, we're not going to give you the cumulative. That way we're just giving you what is happening at this very moment, which is, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does make sort of tracking the infection rate very difficult because when you're taking cases out at the same time you're putting them in, you don't know what those new case loads look like. You don't know how many more people. You have to wait until it basically disseminates throughout the entire zip code map or zip code region to see if there's been any growth in the county that ASU sits in. And ASU sits in Maricopa County, so it sits in a very large county. And so we won't really be able to see how much ASU's testing and cases are impacting the numbers until it sort of matriculates into the county itself.
Yeah. Stephen Daniels asks, what happened at U of A? Were the tests faulty? What we've learned has happened at U of A is that they had to retest the samples from some of their student athletes, actually some non-student athletes as well. And they did find at U of A some false positives, and they're blaming that on an instrumentation error. They put out a news release on it. There's a little bit more you can read, a little bit more specifics into it, but they had about 12 positive tests of non-athletes that were collected and then rerun, and then only 8 remain positive. This all happened on September 3rd, so to give you some perspective on this. But we'll keep you updated as we see that. So thank you for the question on that. Lots of good questions coming in. I want to get some more information or get some more of those answered. And I saw one that just came in about schools. Will schools go back and close down again? That just remains to be seen as we watch these numbers. But what we can tell you is that more counties last week, Garrett, were added into that clearance zone, the benchmarks for schools to reopen. So it looks like we only have 5 counties outstanding right now of the 15 here in Arizona. That being Gila, Graham, Mojave, Santa Cruz, and Yuma. Do you think any of those are going to get closer this week?
It does appear that Santa Cruz is likely to revert to moderate status this week. Yuma, I think we went over this. Yuma is, I'm looking at it right now. It also looks like it should revert to moderate status this week. But Gila and Graham County, I think they are the 2 that are not going to move next week. I'm looking at Gila right now. Yeah, Gila is it's gonna be at least a week for Gila, another week, so it won't be this Thursday. Graham County, small county, had a large infection rate. Just an infection rate, by the way, not necessarily a lot of people in Graham County being infected, but it's a fairly small county. Considered a hotspot by the White House reports we've seen. And it looks like, as of right now, they're not anytime soon going to be moving to the moderate status. So, yeah, it looks like we're going to have some more counties this week.
Okay, well, we will see that for sure and keep everybody updated as we track it. But obviously, that's an update that comes on Thursday, which being Tuesday already, only about 48 hours out, but getting kind of a snapshot of how that looks. All right, when we're talking about that R naught number, it did go a little higher this week. Let's see, today it seems
it's back down
0.92.
Yeah, it's back down today. And again, this is all due to that hiccup. You know, the best sort of analogy, you know, we talk about the actual mathematical meaning of RT, but like sort of in a very basic sense, as I said, think of the RT as sort of when it's going up or when it's above 1, the gas pedal is being pushed. And when it's not above 1, it's just the gas pedal's not being pushed and everything's in neutral as it's coasting down the street. You know, if you're just because it's above 1 doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be gunning all the way to 80. It could be just a small bump and then go back down. And that's sort of what we're seeing right now. That 1 over 1 that we saw from the weekend appears to be from the ASU testing. Right now, we still have, and we probably will for a couple weeks or so. We will not have our error bars under 1 for a while. But depending on what happens over the next couple days, you know, we won't know anything about Labor Day again for at least 4, 5, 6, 7 days. We might be having a different conversation next Tuesday. We just don't know yet on what's going to happen. And then, of course, the RT, if we're having a different conversation next Tuesday, the RT won't be reflected until like Wednesday or Thursday when, you know, if Labor Day was a problem, it'll go back up above 1, but we'll see. We don't know yet.
Right, updated once a day. So we'll continue talking that full range there, 0.73 to 1.11. I want to read that for everybody who's watching on a smaller phone right now. What do you say are the active cases? What do you think is the range of active cases here in Arizona right now? It's got to be under 20,000.
It is under 20,000. I believe it's anywhere from 10 to 18,000 at this point.
And as we always go over here each day, you're taking the 206,000 cases and then sort of subtracting things out from it, including the time since the positive test. Assuming that these people got better. Obviously, there's long haulers who remain sick for a very, very long time, and they're the outliers in this. But the range gives us that.
And going back to ASU very quickly, you know, that's sort of one of the problems with just giving an active number is unless we know your definition of an active case, it's difficult to mean what that means. I mean, did you take them off the rolls after 7 days because they're under a certain age group? Did you take them off after 14 days because they're under a certain age group? Or did you actually have someone call them and say, hey, are you done? Or did you retest them and that they didn't have, you know, they were done with the virus? We don't know. So, you know, giving us active cases and not giving us the reason for for pulling them off the active roster is I don't want to say it's problematic, but it's just sort of raises questions as to what they're doing to you know, the difference between the active and inactive cases. AZDHS doesn't give us an active inactive number, so we don't know what they're using. Maricopa County doesn't give us an active inactive number. We have a couple different methodologies from some of the counties, and I said some of them are based off the epidemiological investigations. They call, and the person's like, yep, I'm done. They're done with their quarantine, and they don't have any symptoms, so they close the investigation. And then some of the other counties, they just do it mathematically, saying, well, if these cases are 14 days old or 28 days old, then we're taking them off the roster as active cases, unless, of course, the case is marked as deceased.
Garrett, how did things look since we met last? We get an update on late Thursday evening into Friday morning when we see that zip code map. Now, this is only for Maricopa County. We're lucky to have this information from Maricopa County, but it's the only county we get it from. And I'm wondering just how things looked at the snapshot overview of this, because we have high school athletes that have headed back. Yesterday was one of the first days of official practice. In fact, when they were cleared to go back, some of them were meeting at 12:01, so midnight on Sunday to get a jump start on Monday. That's how committed they were to to making it back to the field. And then also we have several schools that started back today. Now, while a lot of people are excited about it, you can be excited and nervous and worrisome in the same breath. And we recognize that, and that they want to get some clarity on how things look zip code to zip code.
So this is our zip code map. We did talk about this on Friday, but we'll go over it again. As you can see, we finally have one zip code in Maricopa County proper that is in minimal spread, and it's actually Sun City West that has minimal spread. Which if you know, I know some people have different concerns about the virus, but the fact that it does impact older generation more than younger generation, that's a great thing that it's not running rampant in Sun City West. So, and you can see the sort of we're really starting to see the substantial zip codes are the ones that got hit the hardest, and most of them are still, as you can see, a lot of these zip codes that are in the red are zip codes that had really bad percent positivities and cases per 100, but this most recent weekend, this last Thursday, their numbers were in the yellow. So by next weekend, a lot of these zip codes, we're only going to have a few zip codes by next weekend, by next Friday, that are going to be in the substantial. Most of these are going to move to yellow. And in fact, we may even have some greens here and there. As you can see right here, here's another Sun City zip code. It appears that this Sun City zip code is going to move to the green next week as well. So we have some tremendous movement here on these.
So Garrett, if I remember correctly, the first zip code to turn green was in Paradise Valley. Did that turn back to yellow?
I believe that was because I remember that too. I believe that was a town turning to green. I don't think it was the zip code. I think it was the town, but it could have been the zip code. And yes, it did revert back to yellow based on the cases per 100. I see it's just over 10. So the town of Paradise Valley went from green to yellow. Yes.
Yeah. And what two particular areas are green on this city map? It's hard to see from here. Well, it looks like there's 3 areas.
It looks actually no. These are red actually.
Right, that's what I mean. Sorry, when I'm looking at your map, it says city up on the top, but this is not separated by city.
No, this is cities. These are cities. So you can see these very small jurisdictions. El Mirage had a substantial percent positive 2 weeks ago, so it's still in the red. Carefree had a very high percent positive, but as you can see with their cases per 100 being 0, this is an area, if you know anything about Carefree, that you get 1 or 2 people that test positive, it could flag this. That could pretty much impact that percent positive pretty tremendously. And then you have Tolleson right here that had a high per 100K, and it should move to yellow. And then this is the town of Guadalupe, which I believe there was actually there's some movement in on how this town has actually done some work to resolve its cases, and you can see the percent positivity being 0 and the cases per 100 being 90. I expect sort of a percent positivity of 0 in there sometimes, because a lot of people who live in Guadalupe, if you've ever been through there, it's literally a street, and a lot of them would likely get tested elsewhere.
Yeah, interesting to see that map. So it does, though, seem like things are changing when we look at the specific zip codes. It was kind of split by Scottsdale Road before, but now we're seeing yellow show up the top half of the valley and so north and east.
Yes, it's now sort of moving instead of just being an East Valley, West Valley split, it's now becoming a suburban urban split. If you looked at a density map, with the exception of the Salt River Pima area right here, most of these zip codes now that are in the red are fairly dense zip codes for even for Arizona standards. Arizona is not, we have a very sprawling city. Our zip codes are not necessarily that dense, but this one, these are pretty much some of our densest zip codes that are still in the red.
Yeah. So when the interesting thing about this map also is that we can take it all the way down to school districts, and I'm curious how things looked on Friday after that.
As you can see, as far as the unified school districts, which almost all exist in these suburban areas, they're all yellow at this, with the exception of Saddle Mountain Unified. Everything else is in the yellow and moving to green at this point. There are some, I presume, just a little bit over. It looks like they're going to stay yellow for a bit. these are some pretty large areas, these unifieds. So it's, Mesa, for example, they're still within the virtual on-site, even though they're yellow, they still are sort of in that orange category because of this right here. They have an 8.4% positivity from last week, but it looks like it's going to be yellow next week. It appears that something like Fountain Hills Unified could technically move to green pretty quickly, but we'll move to, pardon me, we'll move to elementary schools. We do have a couple outlying elementary schools that are green, but as you can see, most of the elementary school districts do exist in that sort of dense area of Phoenix that still has a lot of red. But we do, at one point, if you recall, almost all of these were red, and now we're starting to see sort of a split in the inner suburbs of Maricopa County are starting to turn yellow, and now we're pretty much just looking at some of the more dense areas.
So, you know what, I do want to answer, Sarah, I see your question on there, and I do want to answer that. How does the Scottsdale Unified School District look? And the reason I'm selecting this question out of here right now is because tomorrow night they have a meeting. They've taken a parent survey to sort of see what parents want to do with the schools, and it is a very, very hot issue in that area right now. And I know a lot of people, we're giving them the tools to find ways to be able to watch the updates coming from the school, and that is happening tomorrow night. But in the meantime, how do those numbers look for them?
Yes. So, and again, Dove Duncan, I do know Guadalupe is not just a street. I do apologize. It is definitely a tribal community, and it's a wonderful part of town. So please don't take any offense to when I said it was just a street. So Scottsdale Unified, you can see right here. It's hard to read, but I'll read them out. They're still technically in the yellow. Their cases per 100K are at 25. They're supposed to be at 10. Just over that. Their percent positivity is well under 5% range. It's at 3.54. Their COVID is at 2. You can see if you look at the prior week's data, their cases per 100K has gone down. It was at 33, and now it's at 25. Their percent positivity is the same as it was last week, 3.8 to 3.5. That's essentially the same. And then their COVID-like illness went down by a point. So things are trending in the correct direction for Scottsdale Unified at this point.
Okay. And obviously, we'll stay on that story for you tomorrow. Clifton's asking, is it possible that testing had been reduced per the president? My kids have waited almost a month to get results. Clifton, if your kids are truly still waiting a month to get results, you should call your provider, because, Garrett, you're seeing no lag in testing at this point.
I haven't seen a lag in testing for 2 or 3 weeks now. So, I mean, we are seeing basically any tests that are coming through and being reported by AZDHS have occurred in the last 36 to 72 hours or so.
Yeah, Clifton, you'll want to call your provider and ask a little bit more about that, because that seems very strange to wait a month, or at the very least, just go get a test right now and you'll get it back very quickly. That's what we're seeing. Cutler asked question, if areas cases rise and they go back into the red, do the schools re-close again? You know, Daniel Lerner has been our reporter on this all along, and as far as education goes, and the plans that they have in place and the plans that they're communicating with all of us as well. Obviously, if we see these numbers go up all across the valley and across the state, it's going to be bigger cause for concern overall. But specifically the plans of your specific school district, you'll want to check in with her and check our website, which is abc15.com/schools. And it's got the very latest information on what that looks like and what their plans are. All right, Kate, we just covered Sun City. Rewind just a little bit. It's looking it's looking pretty good there. Just rewind a bit. And Lee is asking, how is Coconino County doing? Boy, that was one of the ones that kind of bounced around for a little bit. Are we able to check those numbers for him?
Yeah, I mean, I'll bring up another chart really quick. I actually just finished fixing this chart. It was giving me some problems. I used to show it a lot, and then I stopped showing it, so I'm going to put it back up right now.
Garrett, how did you do things over the weekend? Was some of this automated to be able to update some of your graphs and charts, or do you physically have to go onto these sites and pull this data so that you have the dailies updated? I
do have to. There are some things that I have to do manually. A lot of the daily stuff is done automatically. I have something that does that. But some of the manual stuff or some of the daily reported numbers, I still have to go in and just, plot and actually sit there and do it. But I've got a system down where during a weekend, I can, and what I know is going to be a low reporting day, I can do sort of a bare minimum just to make sure that the graphs work. And then on weekdays, I've got a much larger system that takes about 45 minutes to input all the data. But I'm going to have everything. So
yeah, well, we appreciate it. As you're pulling up those numbers on Coconino County, I just saw a question. Oh, is it gone already? Oh, Dion asks Yuma County for schools. Not there yet. We covered it a little bit earlier, and Yuma County is not there yet. The next update we could get is Thursday, but yeah, it's not there yet. I'm sorry to say for you. Okay, so Coconino County.
So I've got all the counties now. I'm going to bring up my county growth chart. So this is something I put together a long time ago. I haven't shown it. I'll bring it. Let me just take it down to the first county so that we just go through one by one. So we're going to start with Graham County here. You can see we go to Gila. We're basically just taking this as the, we can see how these things are doing. This is cases per capita on a linear scale. So you can see as of right now with those three counties, Gila and Mojave, Gila definitely has a harder, a more impacted infection rate. Yavapai, very low. Cochise County, sort of in the middle of those counties. Greenlee County, very low. In fact, Greenlee County is, as we've said before, it's nearing having 0 confirmed cases. And then what did I just open? Cochise County, sort of in the middle. Pinal County is up on top. Now we just added Maricopa County, which of course it's going to change a lot. But here now we're getting to some of the bigger ones. Yuma County, right there at the top. Coconino. So Coconino, as you can see, I'll just start here. Coconino has about a middle-sized infection. It was a really bad infection early on. As you can see, it was at one point, 40 days into this thing, it was the worst hit area in Arizona. But right now, it's only the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's about the 8th hit in this city or in the state. My apologies. And the doubling time for the county is 76 days, which is basically a flat curve at this point.
Okay. Tina writes, dead woman just tested positive. How'd that happen if never tested? One of many. Tina, that's because what's happening is when we have this curve of excess deaths, so a number of deaths over last year's number of deaths, so a higher than expected number. If somebody dies, they're going to test that person for COVID to make sure that COVID didn't play a role in this. That's exactly how that happens. So if you have an untimely death in Maricopa County, they're going to test you for coronavirus.
Yeah, especially if you're not, I mean, obviously if you're in the hospital and you die in a hospital, you've already been tested. But if you die at home, then, they're going to test you to just see what happens. And then as we've talked before, because this comes up constantly, they will test. And if you become positive, they will initially put you in the investigative stage and possibly even put you as a probable COVID death. And then they will continue through, and the death certificate will be reviewed. The manner in which you died will be reviewed. And then they will determine over a period of time if it is in fact a COVID-19 death or not. So it could be initially marked as a COVID-19 death and then be pulled before it's reported. These things take time for all of these deaths to be sort of put into stone, all of this data to be put into stone. We're used to, the health departments across the country are used to, having sort of compiling all this data and releasing 1 or 2 reports every single year on what this data is. And now we're sort of looking at this data in the real-time stream as they're doing the investigation. So we have to give them a little bit of patience and leeway as deaths are sort of brought in and brought out. Like, for example, yesterday when there was -2 deaths being reported. Well, this is an investigative process. They pulled 2 deaths from the line because they said, well, these are either duplicates or there's something wrong with them. And then if they are in fact COVID-19 deaths, they will be brought into it. We see it all the time.
So for people who are writing on the chat, this is fake, I don't believe any of this, then this is probably not the Facebook Live for you. We're simply providing the information and the data so that you all can make the best decisions for your family and your life. You know their health, you know their lifestyle, you know their tendencies, and this is just a forum for you to help find numbers that are Arizona based so that you can make the best choices for your family and your life. We are getting back to real life in some little tiny ways. The NFL starts week 1. I believe the first game is on Thursday. You know it's a pandemic when I'm doing all kinds of crazy stuff like joining an NFL fantasy league. I had said I'd never do that, and here I am, all signed up. And I don't want to brag, but I'm picked to come in second place in all of my friends who are in this fantasy league. So I guess it pays to be a rookie in this case. And then also Phoenix Rising is having some fans. Oh, thanks, Colleen. Thank you for being here. Phoenix Rising is inviting some fans back. They're going to allow less than 1,000 fans. Obviously, everybody's going to be social distance. You sit there with your family, kind of like the movie theaters are doing it. The stadium is obviously outside. This is only open to season ticket holders currently. So this is over at Casino Arizona Field, and the first night they're going to have fans in is coming up on Friday, September 11th. So I wanted to update you on that. Also, NASCAR told us last week that they would allow some of their fans back in at some of the upcoming events. So we'll learn a little bit more about their plans for Phoenix Raceway in November. But season ticket holders in the same way are going to get priority. We're seeing a lot of people do that, Garrett. Like when the zoo reopened, the zoo said, okay, if you're a season pass holder, you all come back first. So it's kind of a courtesy to people who have been committed to the team or the zoo or whatever the facility is all along to welcome them back first.
Yeah, and it's also easier to make those percent the number of quotas using people that already have tickets instead of just opening up. And if you don't have a reservation system,
you can judge exactly by how many season ticket holders you have or pass holders. All right, so let's see, what have we not covered today? How do hospitalizations look? I want to get to that. I see that we have about 119 people still on ventilators. We have about 221 in the ICU. How do things look overall for our hospital numbers? We're in this little lull right now.
Yeah.
I've also noticed it. I was not here last week, had to go to some doctor's appointments for family members, and over at the hospital, it is busy over there because people are thinking, okay, I'm gonna sneak in for whatever procedure or pseudo elective care I have that I could put off for a while and then go take care of it in this lull. So this would be the time. How do things look?
Things look great at the hospitals. We're essentially, where we were in the very, very beginning when reporting began right now for the most part in nearly all of these. So for the ICU, for example, here we are right now at 212 ICU beds occupied by COVID-19 patients. The very beginning reporting on April 9th, that number was 248. This number right here, 155, is lower, but it's also sort of the first day of reporting, and typically, you're seeing a ramp up of a hospital system, either Honor Health, Banner, somebody wasn't online that day. So realistically, today we have the lowest number of ICU patients on COVID-19 than we ever had. We've seen the same thing with the inpatient. We're seeing a slightly higher number, but still, here we are at the very beginning, we were at 520 COVID-19 patients. Today we're at 660. So barely any increase. And you can see even we're starting to see a slight decrease in the actual census numbers, the true number of hospitalizations, just all across the board. You can see we're starting to get to the point where those hospitals are getting through those elective surgeries and other things that they needed to take care of, and the actual number of beds are starting to go down. Emergency room department visits, same thing. This is just agnostic to COVID-19. It doesn't mean anything. This is just all emergency room beds being used. And you can see very little changes here. We'll go up to the ventilators, as you said. The ventilator numbers, these are all ventilators, slight increase, but still at 29%. And then we'll go to the COVID-19 numbers here. So we're going to go through a couple of these. Again, we've already seen some of these. 657 inpatient, no discernible increase, a slight sort of slowing of the curve, but no increase. Ventilators, 112, lower than we ever had, even with the reporting metric issue back in April 8th. So almost, very, very few ventilators being used right now. ICU, again, 212, lower than we've had. Discharge rates are going down too, but there's less people in the hospital that have COVID-19. So of course they're going to go down. The emergency room visits, Also, you can see it's a slower decline, but it's still going down. We did break that 800, and we haven't, moved back up. And this is one of the biggest concerns we've had, was watching that emergency room department visits, as sort of we talked about how when ASU was increasing its cases, the one number that would start moving up before any of the others is the emergency room. And it's not moving up. So far, everything is sort of on track to still continue in the positive direction. And then the intubations for the ventilators are at a low too. And I'll go over one more number. This is the COVID-like illness surveillance charts. They're calculated on Sundays. And you can see right now, and these are weekly, these are done as a sort of a weekly average, if you will. And you can see for inpatients, 2.2%. That's essentially where we were in February, before we were even locked down. And then the emergency room department's visits for CLI, that number is lower than it ever has been. In fact, I saw another analyst, I guess, looked back at the CDC's numbers, and our emergency room department visits are lower than they have been since December, when the surveillance actually started beginning. So yeah, great numbers there.
Yeah, really good news. All right, I want to get to more of the questions. Deanna writes, I know there's not many stations in the country doing what you're doing, giving us all the numbers. I'm thankful to live here and have this information. Thank you again. Deanna, very sweet. Thank you. We're just committed to making sure people get these numbers, and we're staring at these sites all day, so we just want to be able to help you all find this information easily. And Brant writes, will snowbirds raise the numbers? This is going to be interesting, Garrett. I come from a family of realtors. I've had a real estate license for 10 years. I obviously work here. I don't hang my license anywhere, but so I watch this stuff very closely, and this is going to be super interesting this next winter, because even if we don't get snowbirds coming in at the same number, we're getting people who are realizing they can work remotely. And they're deciding, why am I going to work in New York? Why am I going to work in New Jersey? Why am I going to work in Minnesota when I can do all the same things remotely from Arizona and come stay there? So it's going to be interesting to see if the face of the snowbird changes for this year, if things are going to look differently because of that, if that will drive up the market here in Arizona, because we're getting all ages in, not just those who have retired and are able to leave. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. We'll obviously track it and tell that story as the snow moves in. It's already hitting Denver. So
yeah, I mean, I have a friend just like that, like what you just said. I have a friend who's a reporter in DC that works for one of the major capital newspapers, and they're moving to Peoria this year. Yeah. And they're not changing their jobs. So they're still going to be a reporter for a DC outlet, but be living in Arizona for the exact reason that you're talking about, that this remoting sort of that's going on is sort of changing the dynamic of how we're doing business.
Yeah, it's changing the dynamic of reporting for the viewer as well, because we can get the best possible person to interview for the story, because a lot of people are doing it over Zoom or WebEx or any of these different sites that they're able to do the interview on. Whereas before we would say, oh, okay, do we want to interview this person in Phoenix, or do we need to drive to Tucson? You would have to make an investment in time to get that interview, the best interview out there based on the city that they're in. So it's really interesting how that's going to change. Really good question, Brant. Yeah, thank you for joining us on here and writing it. Let's see. Woo-hoo-hoo. Lots of things coming in. I'm trying to cruise through these numbers really quick. Kathy writes, good hospital numbers look great. Good job, Arizona. Yeah, they look really good. Hopefully we can stay on this same track. So Garrett, what we're saying is in the next few days, and what we heard from AZDHS is in the next few days, if people have been exposed over the holiday, they'll start to get some symptoms, and then it'll likely be a few days beyond that they'll go and get tested. You're saying about a 48-hour delay, if any, in testing. So really, over the next few weeks are when we would likely see those numbers change, if they do.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, just based on what I know about this reporting, we wouldn't start seeing if this is all if, of course, we wouldn't really start seeing an increase in cases until Saturday. If Labor Day weekend itself was a driver for an increase in cases, it's going to be at least 4 days, but really for us 5 days, because what we're seeing every time we report cases, we report them on, it's basically, I'm showing you numbers from yesterday, not from today. So of course, Saturday is when we'll see if there's a big problem. We just don't know yet. Now, of course, the good thing, I guess, is that we have our testing capacity is much higher than it was back in Memorial Day. So while we saw those spikes in mobility that sort of corresponded with an increase of cases with Memorial Day, we didn't actually, it took so long for us to ramp up the testing. In fact, we never actually did ramp up the testing the entire time. This next sort of round, if it were to occur, we have the testing capacity now that we wouldn't be looking at a 15, 16-day lag. If people come in and need to be tested, it's much easier for them to get those tests.
So last week we reported on something that got a lot of people talking, and that is Maricopa County heading out to, this week, put some hangers on your door. If you get a hanger on your door that says they would like to come back and test you for the antibody, and they would do so by not coming into your house. They would come back. They have specific dates at the end of September that they would head back. They would invite you out of your home, like into the driveway or somewhere where they can set up a tent for some shade and do a quick test. They would send it off to Mayo Clinic. They would let you know the results. They would obviously statistically look at the results and then destroy the results so that you have that information. Can you help people better understand? Because a lot of people said, I don't get it. I don't want to do it. I personally would love to do it. I would love the information. But statistically, 500 households tested gets us to a pretty good number. This is some of the same methodology that's done in any kind of testing or polling out there. So can you help folks better understand why 500 homes gives an accurate representation of 4.4 million in Maricopa County?
And you hit the nail right on the head. So this is similar to any sort of survey work that's ever been done. So what they're doing is they're going to make is similar to what the census does. They do a random selection of geographic distribution to make sure that they're getting sort of everyone, an area of each of the different representative suburbs and the density in those areas. So they'll test more people in Central Phoenix, less people in Gilbert, Peoria, Fountain Hills. But what they're doing is they're doing what's called a seroprevalence test. So they're going to check to see if you have the antibodies. And so what they do is they collect all this information randomly. They get you from they pick up your information from probably census data, and then they come in and they do this, and then they randomize it because they don't need to know who you are after that. They literally only care about the region you live in, and then they put this all together and they get what is a seroprevalence of the county. So they want to see anywhere from 2 to 15%, but if they do 500, they can be sure within what's called a margin of error of about 4 points. So if, for example, we do a seroprevalence survey and it comes out to 10% with 500 people, that really means that they are 95% confident that the antibody, the number of people exposed in Arizona is 14 to 6%. If the results come out to 10%, it would be sort of that range of 14 to 6%, which have been exposed. And that's, again, every political poll you've ever taken, anything you've ever seen, being reported in the news as far as any poll, not even just political poll, but political polls are obviously going on all over the place right now. But it's the exact same methodology as a political poll.
Okay, good stuff. I just want to address one thing really quick before we wrap up for the day. Shannon wrote, did you see the CDC said it's literally not necessary to get tested for COVID unless you actually have symptoms. So Shannon, one of the important things to note is that those are the nationwide recommendations for the CDC, and that goes on to say you need to check local information on that. You can do that on the AZDHS site under the director's blog. So she said what the standards are for testing here in Arizona. It would be different than exactly what the CDC says because that's a blanket statement, and you should check that a little closer to see what that update is. We don't have time to get into all of it here, but if we do tomorrow, we'll get into that. We always have a lot to talk about on Wednesday as well. We want to thank all of you for joining us on here. It was so strange to be away from all of you for just a matter of days. It felt like years. So it's nice to be back, and we appreciate all the kind comments and, of course, the really thoughtful questions on here today. So where can you find Garrett? You can find him on Twitter. Do you like my pen today? No one even commented.
Great. I love your pen.
It's my daughter's pen here. And with a smile. You can find Garrett. There's his address at Garrett_Archer on Twitter. I am on Twitter as well at Katie Raml. You can also connect with us right over here on Facebook Facebook if that's where you're watching from now and that's your preferred method. Facebook.com/news from Katie is the place to find me. Of course, all the very latest reporting coming for you at 4, 5, 6, and 10 p.m. And also, we added a 9 p.m. show for those of you who like to go to bed early, who are getting on that pandemic routine and crashing out early. We have that for you at 9 over on CW61. So all the very latest information and reporting right there. And we will see you back here tomorrow. Same time, same place. Be safe, everyone.